欢迎收听可持续对话。今天的这期节目是我们的第2期英文访谈播客。我非常开心地邀请到了好朋友，一位对中国有着深厚情感的建筑师 Hisham Youssef。他出生在埃及开罗，先后就读于哈佛大学和哥伦比亚大学，职业生涯横跨了纽约、东京、迪拜和上海，参与过东京国际论坛、上海国际金融中心等世界级项目。如今，他在苏州大学建筑学院任教，把可持续建筑的理念带给新一代学生。Hisham 在中国生活多年，他用相机记录下上海的老街区与普通人的日常，并通过著有《消失的上海》呼吁大家关注城市记忆与文化遗产的保护。在他看来，建筑不仅是钢筋水泥的组合，更是生活、文化与历史延续。在本期节目中，我们将和 Hisham 一起聊聊什么是可持续城市，中国在快速发展中的成就与挑战，以及年轻一代的建筑学生如何在全球化的背景下思考未来。请跟随我们的对话，走进这位跨越文化与大洲的建筑师的人生与思考。这期节目和 Hisham Youssef 的对话非常精彩，内容也非常丰富，因为录制时长超过了1个半小时。为了让大家更加轻松地收听和消化，我们决定把节目分成上下部分分别发布，欢迎大家的关注。接下来请收听第一部分。Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our followers across the world. We have the privilege of having one of my good friends, Hisham Youssef, who is now spending most of his time in the city of Shanghai and also partly in Suzhou. He's a friend of mine and also he's a renowned architect. Hisham, why don't you say hi to our friends on our podcast?
Well, hello everyone, and Jaming, thank you very much for having me for this session.
You are not unfamiliar. You are very familiar with radios, right? When you were in UAE, you were invited constantly to the radio station, right? To record shows?
Yes. I lived in the UAE for about 5 years, and it was a time of amazing, change and growth in the city. And at the time, I had my own column in a magazine. I was invited to a few radio stations. There were no podcasts and all that at the time. And that wasn't too long ago either.
That was in 15 years ago?
It was exactly 15 years ago when I left. So I arrived Dubai 06 until 11.
So that was the prime time for Dubai's development, right?
So that was incredible, an incredible time of growth for the city.
So actually, when you were in Dubai for 5 years, you were also the president of the local architect community, right? You have an association, right?
I formed actually I formed a small group back then in the UAE, so it was all local to local architects there. And then I worked with a couple of foreign architects because I belong to something called the American Institute of Architects.
Yeah.
AIA, yes. Not to be confused with the insurance company here.
I visited AIA exhibition. I think they have a New York chapter where they preserve a lot of, the city legacies of the redevelopment of New York.
That's the first chapter, in fact, of the AIA.
That was actually in Greenwich Village, right? That was near NYU.
Yes, just north of the village, yes.
Yeah, very impressive exhibition. So you were part of AIA and then you created something locally for UAE, right?
The other way around, but but I was involved essentially in a lot of programs, organizing meetings and talks and presentations and seminars and all that in Dubai. It was a great time where people were looking, they were very hungry for having meetings and understanding all the issues that have to do with design and developing a city essentially from scratch. I mean, Dubai was tabula rasa. Everybody's coming in from everywhere around the world, creating all kinds of buildings. I mean, the airport tripled in size while I was there. The main road, which is Sheikh Zayed, doubled in size while I was there. I mean, it was an incredible time of growth and activity. So there was a lot of energy.
So that when you were still with the international architect firms, right?
Actually, that's what brought me to Shanghai.
That's what you brought. So when did you land in Shanghai?
I landed exactly in May 2011.
May 2011.
So I missed the expo, which is something I really wanted to come for, but I couldn't make it then. So I landed essentially in Shanghai in a place which is very similar to Dubai when I first got there.
Pudong?
No, I meant like I landed in a place where there's
developments,
development, optimism, ambitions,
urge to build skyscrapers,
build all kinds of things, new cities, infrastructure, metro. I mean,
so that was seamless for you,
Yeah, so it was fantastic. So when I first landed here, I thought this is fantastic. They're all new projects all the time. Not everything is getting built, but as an architect, this is a big playground.
It's the blank canvas for you.
Well, the context is very different. In Dubai, it literally was a blank canvas. But here, there was a culture, whether you look at, the Chinese culture in general, or the city. I mean, the city has existed for a long time. There are many things that already existed in the city, whether it's old buildings, markets, all kinds of, history here. In Dubai, I'm not saying there's no history, but there's no visible artifacts for it. So you're building literally things from scratch there. Here, there was a different context, but the same vibe in terms of you're developing many things on the arts, in F&B, like dining, in infrastructure, in building. So it was a fantastic time. Yeah.
So when you came to China, what was your first impression when you started living here or working professionally here?
Energy, chaos, just as I like a big city.
I like your first word, energy. It's like you felt energy there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, of course. I think post-Olympic China and post, as you say, Shanghai Expo China is something very different from what is now. That was kind of the period, I was, when you land in China, I just graduated from college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the beginning of my career. And, there is a very interesting description of the time that is called the 经济上行期. So it is when the economy is soaring, the economy is developing. And they have a different style of beauty at that period of time. And that has also happened in the United States in the 80s, in the 90s, and also in Dubai.
Of course.
And also in Tokyo in a way. There is always a kind of, atmosphere, or people, as you mentioned, energy.
It's funny because I was also in Tokyo at a similar time. I lived in Tokyo back in
before the bubble? Or after the bubble?
Just before the bubble. So I was there I worked on something called the Tokyo International Forum. And that was kind of the last of the grand projects in Tokyo before the bubble. So that was like mid-1990s.
That was a crazy period of time.
That was a crazy period of time. A lot of new construction, a lot of, foreign architects are also,
Nobody cares about the costs.
And cost wasn't an issue. I mean, that project that I worked on was once in a lifetime.
Luxurious.
So, I was in Tokyo, and then I went to Dubai, and then I came here. Of course, the context is...
And you spent some time in New York when New York was pre...
Well, I've been through the ups and downs of New York. I did my...
So before Bloomberg?
Oh, yes. I arrived when it was Lincoln's. So I arrived there in 86.
86, oh.
Yeah. So New York was actually not safe to walk around.
Especially in the Columbia University
neighborhood. Yeah, exactly. You walk down the street. But
yeah.
Interestingly, what changed a little bit the safety on the streets were the Korean delis.
The Korean delis?
Because they're open 24 hours.
Okay.
So there's always lights on every street corner, you know. So you walk down the street and you feel a certain amount of safety. But if these were not there, the streets would be dark. Crime was high at the time. And then Giuliani came. He cleaned up the streets and all that. You could walk through Central Park at night. By the time I finished, Columbia in '89.
And you started your architecture career in New York City.
In New York City. I lived in New York basically until I went to Dubai, which was 06.
06.
Yeah.
So give and take like 20 years in New York City.
In New York City, yeah.
New York City changed a lot in the 90s, in the early 20s, right?
It changed a lot back then. It was an amazing time. There was the show that everybody knows, Sex and the City and all that. And
actually, that was also, as you mentioned, that you definitely spent your best period of time of each city that you spent in, right?
In a way, yes.
I'm
lucky.
Yes.
I mean, now you're making me think about it as you're bringing up, all these topics. Yeah. I mean, I was in New York at an amazing time. The reason I brought Sex and the City is
Were you a Mr. Big, the dating around?
We can talk about that off
in another occasion.
Yeah. It's funny because the show was art imitating life.
Yeah.
But as the show became popular, it was life imitating art. Mm-hmm. People were beginning to live, almost like,
like Samantha, like all the people in the show. Yeah.
You seem to know the show better than me.
Of course. I forget. I think one of the reasons why I can speak good English is because two American TV series. One is Friends, because they are kind of my friends in the United States. And although, it started in 1994 and it lasted till 2004, the reason that I started watching that show is actually at the finale of the TV series Friends, there is international news coverage saying this is the finale of the 10th season TV episode. That was in 2004.
Okay.
And when I was in China, I was born and raised in northeastern part of China in Jilin province. When I was in hometown, I watched the news. I remember vividly is saying that the voiceover told me that this show lasted for 10 years, and I think the final episode has tens of millions of people watching together. And there is a footage showing a young lady who sits on the lawns of Central Park when a group of people watching the finale on the lawns of the Central Park with the skyline of New York and Manhattan. And I was impressed. And then, when I think after my college entrance examination, I think, I need to explore New York in another way, which is Sex and the City. So I think, a lot of Chinese people, especially for those who speak good English, these two episodes are actually playing a very important role for them to understand the U.S. culture.
Interesting, okay.
And to be part of the adulthood. Because, for the group of friends, it's actually people stuck in the second gear, right? It's like, they trying to figure out when they turn 30, when they are trying to become an adult. And for Sex and the City, it's basically love life, about how to make full use of the city like New York. So I was, that's the reason why first of all, I speak good English. And second is the reason, the minute there is a headhunter approached me saying there is in New York, there is an opportunity that can give you access to New York City. I said, okay, I'm going to take the interview regardless.
And New York is a fantastic place. I loved all my time there. It was, again, a place full of energy. And interestingly,
it's happening. It's like there's always a friends visiting, and there is always something happening in New York City.
But it changed. So what I'm getting to is I was stuck here during the pandemic. And finally, when they said, okay, you can travel, I went at the end of 23.
23, okay.
I went to New York. And I was surprised by it. It looked like, a little depressed. It wasn't the same vibe, on the street. A lot of commercial, places, closed. It just didn't seem the same.
I have the same feeling as you did because I traveled to New York City. I think the last trip that I made to New York City was in December 2018. So basically, literally 7 years ago. So after 7 years, I revisited New York earlier this February. Although it's very cold, it's all windy and cloudy. So, I still remember the first time that I walked down the Fifth Avenue, and especially at the Midtown part. I find, okay, this is really, really up and becoming. This is dream coming true that Fifth Avenue luxury stores and people walking around are so stylish. But this time I visited, I said, okay, within 7 years, there's nothing that has changed. Even the subway system, there's nothing different. Although now I can just tap my credit card to enter the system. That is a kind of a
Some
upgrade.
Technology changed, but that's about it. I agree with you.
Yeah, but nothing changed. But compare with what has happened here in Asia, I think not only about China, but if you visit Bangkok or Singapore, you can see difference happening on a daily basis. But when you visit the capital of the capitalism world, New York City, there's nothing different. And, people are still, it's kind of, very interesting because usually speaking, I think New York should be taking the lead in the world of being innovative, being the center of what's happening there.
I mean, it's an interesting observation. I agree with you about this. There's definitely a lot more development that took place during the time that I lived here, across, Asia in general. New York it seemed like it was stuck in a different era. For me, there was a lot of nostalgia because I go to like some of the old haunts and I go in there and the place is still the same and I feel like, oh, this is really nice. I mean,
Boston still stays the same, but it's still really nice, right?
Boston is old. I mean, Boston is okay.
It's okay, right?
I spent my college years in Boston. I like the area north of Boston. I have friends up there. It's nice, but again, it's all nostalgia, you know.
So for New York City, I think the biggest development may be the Hudson Yard, right? But for me, it's like a Lego city. It's too much skyscrapers without. I know the spirit of the city is not. It's the same city everywhere else.
But you've seen it before. You've seen Hudson Yards before. Yeah. It's Pudong. It's in Hong Kong. It's in
it's nothing
many
special.
Cities. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't feel like anything special. It's new to America because of the scale of it. But there's nothing really new.
For me, it's like I still enjoy the vintage New York City. It's like I would enjoy a coffee or at the Rockefeller Center. It's like, walking down the Fifth Avenue and even take a jog at Central Park. But that was kind of, as you said, that you spend your prime time there, the prime time of the city when you were in New York City. But I have to say, when you were in New York City, but you still work internationally, right? Your projects are literally across the United States and across the world?
It was really another hotel room for me. I used to travel, actually. There was a period where I used to travel a lot. So New York was literally like in the late 90s. It was just a hotel room for me. If it's Tuesday, it must be Jakarta. If it's Thursday, it must be Sydney. So I was traveling in Asia a lot.
At that period of time. That was basically, I think, a lot of local developers and international investors have a sensation about engaging your company and architects from the United States to build this massive,
I mean, interestingly, I was
hotels
working on a very small project. It was a global implementation. The client back then was a large bank.
Okay.
So
they have different office buildings that they want to do.
No, actually, we were doing just the actual branch banks themselves. So it was a branding exercise across all of Asia Pacific. I mean, I went to factories, outside of Lahore in India. I was in Sydney. I was in Melbourne. I went to Hobart in Tasmania. I mean, it was an amazing engagement. So nothing large, but I've seen kind of...
You do interior, exterior, renovation,
it's all just like doing the branded environment. So we're creating the actual, branch, working with the local business. And it's all about, how does the customer come in, the experience of walking through the spaces and all that. So
small but beautiful projects.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you have the opportunity to travel across the world.
And see how businesses work also in the architecture field and manufacturing and construction. So it was an amazing learning experience.
Wow, that was, I believe that the company pays you to fly business class, right? Or you fly economy.
And occasionally you first.
That was a good period of time for architects.
Money was growing on trees back then. I mean, and especially because a lot of the work was in Asia Pacific. It was incredible.
You're very familiar with Asia Pacific when you travel. When was your first trip to China?
My first trip to China was...
As a tourist?
I came with a client because there was some downtime.
Yeah.
I was on a business trip in Hong Kong in 86.
86, that was...
96, sorry.
90, before the handover.
Just 1 year before the handover.
That was your first trip to China?
Yes.
Okay.
So, the client said, we're leaving, we're coming back in 3 days. And I said, where are you going? And he said, we're going to China. You're welcome to come with us. I said, sure.
And then you fly up from Hong Kong?
We flew to, they had some business in Shanghai and in Beijing, so I flew with them.
Okay.
And I saw Shanghai back in 96, and I didn't really quite appreciate the place at the time. But
why? That was...
Because I hadn't read enough about, the city, and I didn't know what was going on in Pudong. When I arrived, I stayed back then at the Portman Shangri-La, which is now the Ritz-Carlton.
Now the Ritz-Carlton. That was a massive project back then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I went to see the Pearl Tower.
Pearl Tower.
It was just completed a few months earlier.
I think that was the Pearl Tower is kind of, the one landmark in Pudong without all the other skyscrapers.
And that's exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
So I climbed to the top and I looked at
Nothing.
Pudong. I mean, now the familiar scene with all the skyscrapers, and it was one huge construction site. There were no other buildings, maybe 2 or 3 residential buildings here and there.
Imagination limited your,
And then the next time I came was in actually 2008.
2008.
Also for a very brief visit, but Shanghai was already formed in a way. I mean, Pudong was already, at least for the most part,
taking shape.
Yeah. Of course, even during my time here since 2011, a lot new towers came up in Pudong.
So very interestingly, as we talk, you spend most of the quality time of each city that you lived and worked, right? Tokyo, first after New York is Tokyo.
Yes.
And then Tokyo to Dubai, and Dubai to Shanghai.
Right.
So all A-list cities.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky, actually, that this was all done with work.
And also within a very short period of time, for the history, it's a short period of time, but you condense time because of you work with some of the significant projects like what you did in Dubai. It's basically those kind of speed and ambition will never happen in the history of UAE in the future or in the past. For that scale of development, urban development and everything, right?
I mean, the interesting thing was the speed with which things happened in Dubai.
Yeah.
Because I worked on a large project in New York. And we were working with a very large construction management group and a large construction company. And this is in the city. And they were talking about fast-tracking projects and everything. And it was very impressive. Then you go to Dubai. And then you realize
the New York speed is slow.
God, the New York speed is very slow. I mean, now we're talking UAE speed.
Yeah.
You come to China, and similar to Dubai in many ways, but what's impressive in China is the scale. Dubai is one city.
Yeah.
Here you have, I don't know how many cities.
How many Dubais?
How many Dubais exactly where, this type of construction was happening. And also the scale within each city. I mean, in Shanghai, the infrastructure that was built here with all the TOD, the transit-oriented developments, all the new construction that happens around, hub stations in the city, and I mean, it's really incredible.
And you observe the revival of Chinese cities because I think from my perspective there is a shift of the focus. I think. Before, there is the tendency of building more balanced cities, without having the mega cities. But now it's becoming more centralized. It's like the Shanghai taking the lead by having clusters of cities, and that is something the policy is oriented toward. But previously, it's like, we need to have every city everything has to offer. It's more balanced. And now it's leaning toward a more kind of a market-driven, mindset. Where I see the reason why I relocated from Beijing to Shanghai is because I find that in this region things are moving even faster. So there's
then in Beijing. I mean, I haven't been to Beijing in some time, but you're saying Shanghai is faster even than Beijing.
I think Shanghai and Shenzhen tend to be, and even Chengdu. These are more kind of it's like you're flying without restrictions. You can move forward.
Chengdu is incredible.
Chengdu is incredible, but what I find Chengdu is that's another reason that I would like to ask you is basically you've traveled to many cities in China. Which city do you prefer? Your favorite cities in China? It's very difficult.
That's a very difficult question. I do like Shanghai because it's very walkable. And that's something that I think is very important when I live in a place. I've always lived in a city. So I'm not the kind of person who says, I'd like to have, a place in the country. I don't want to live in the city. I don't know any other place other than living in a city, all the conveniences that you have, which for a city like Shanghai, you have everything.
You can occasionally spend some time with your friends in the north of Boston, but you were born and raised in the cities.
I have to be in a city. I need the energy. I need access to everything, even though you don't use it every day.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is healthy.
So Shanghai, you spent like 14 years so far. 15.
Yeah, I'm in my 15th year now.
15th years in Shanghai. Yeah. So Shanghai is still your favorite in China?
I like spending time in the countryside. So and it's very easy here to go to places like in Zhejiang and Anhui. It's very
to do hikings and everything.
Yeah, exactly. You go spend 3 or 4 days there. You get rejuvenated. You come back into the city.
So my question is beyond Shanghai. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah.
Which one?
Dali.
Dali.
Yeah.
You enjoy Dali?
Yes.
I enjoy Dali as well, but
I think there's a certain balance in Dali which has not hit the old town as much as it hit other places. You still have the old town.
You still have the lives there.
And you still and you have new developments, but it's not completely overrun by tourists or new businesses, and it feels nicer. The scale of the place. I won't mention the name of the town because I have a dear friend who lives there and he's doing very good business, but not far from Dali.
Xizhou, right? I enjoy Xizhou so much.
I went to Xizhou, let's say just when it was starting to,
attract attention.
Yes. There was nobody there.
Xizhou? When you first visited?
When I first went there. It was in 2014.
Yeah, thanks to Xiaohongshu. Xizhou is now so crowded.
Exactly. I mean, even to get a Xizhou Baba.
Yeah, Xizhou Baba, yeah.
It's almost like 15 or 20 yuan over there when you can get it in Dali for like 4 or 5.
Yeah, of course.
That's insane,
I like Dali in a way, but I think Dali is now suffering from gentrification. It's a lot of investment pouring in, and, I read the statistics. I want to ask you, do you know how many visitors Dali hosted last year as a tourist destination?
No, the last time I was there was in 23. So,
23, yeah.
So maybe something happened in the meantime.
2024, I saw the statistics. Maybe I can, if I'm wrong, please correct me. It's over 100 million visitors visited Dali. So, but for me, it's like...
In a year.
In a year, within 365 days. For me, it's like when you mentioned Dali, it's no surprise for me because, Dali is also one of my favorite cities. I like the Changshan, I like the Erhai, I like the hiking and everything it has to offer. But as a city boy myself, I find Dali too self-exile. It's like, I need to be self-exile in order to spend some quality time there. But, I'm a workaholic. So sometimes when I'm in Dali, I find guilty. I find, I need to be connected with the rest of the world. But my only channel is internet. So I find kind of isolated and I feel self-exiled when I'm spending time in Dali. Although I know it's quality time, I enjoy the sunshine, enjoy everything that has to offer. But sometimes I feel guilty of relaxing myself.
It's probably true. I mean, there are lots of people who move there. Either
digital nomads.
Exactly. And I mean, Chinese like yourself or foreigners who've gone there and opened businesses. So you're still connected.
Yeah.
You're not living in a village.
Yeah.
But you're living in a place that is, quaint
so
and small. Yeah. It's very different from other places I've visited in China. Chengdu is also a very nice place.
Why?
So
chill, so relaxing?
Yes, and yet it's a big city like Shanghai. Maybe doesn't have the same charm as many places within Shanghai, but it's an interesting place.
I enjoy Chengdu so much.
Yeah.
I enjoy the food. I enjoy the people there. I have so many friends who relocated to Chengdu.
I know some of my friends also relocated
because
there,
I think Chengdu is a very livable city.
Yeah.
Although I find that New Town in the southern part of the city is too gigantic. For me, it's never walkable. You always need to Uber or take a DD somewhere, and it's very...
Impressive, though. The architecture is very impressive. I mean, again, Xiaohongshu style. You take a picture of
style and even Dubai style, right?
Yes.
And sometimes I find it, I know this kind of mega city exists for a reason, and I know that Chengdu has the ambition to become the regional center and also one of the, window for China to open to the rest of the world. But still, I find that, we've talked about this before we hit the record button. It's about the spirit of a city or the soul of a city. So it's really it's very difficult to define a city now because for me, it's like a lot of cities look exactly the same because of the same real estate developers and same style. And as time evolves, I find that, traveling to, although different cities across China, I still find that the resemblances. The shopping malls are the same and everything the same. When you visited some of the local, heritages, and sometimes you just find that these are the isolated spots. They are not connected to the rest of the community. They're well preserved.
Token buildings.
Token buildings,
yeah, exactly. They're kind of put on a stage. You can look at it, but you don't have the community. And I think this is the point that I argue about in my photo book. It's not about preserving the buildings. It's about the community that lives there.
Of course.
And the spirit and the soul of the place that the buildings get from the people who live there. You can go get food, you can see crafts, you can see all kinds of things about how, traditions have survived over the years, But now when everything is generic, as you said, they all look the same.
All the fashion brands, all the
and I'm not
Starbucks.
sure that these will, have lasting power. Like in 100 years from now, I mean, there's nothing defining about Chinese culture in what is being built now that in 100 years you can say, is it luxury? Is it the new coffee shops? I mean, I don't know what it is. And I think it's because the places were lived and worked in at the same time, where you actually see interesting things that are very local to the place and that are not just generic. You can say, well, you can see it's elsewhere in Shanghai, fine, but you can't see it in other cities.
Yeah.
Because the architecture is different, the habits are different, the local crafts are different. And that's, what I miss in the Shanghai over the years that I've been here.
Yeah, for me, it's like what I want to say is that the speed and efficiency the Chinese people are trying to achieve over the past years of development leaves no time for thinking and even deep thinking. All the developers or the investors or all the people who are in this massive urbanization process, we duplicate. We borrow the good practices internationally to build our cities to what it is look like today. But I don't think there is deep, discussions or deliberations or even philosophical level thinking about what exactly should Chinese modern cities look like.
I mean, this is where I think you use the advice of your local institutions. There are lots of,
architect associations.
Architects associations, universities, different departments of historic preservation, where you can look at, because this is an opportunity in any city.
Yeah.
And that's something also that I was critical of when I was in Dubai. Why build a city that looks like Hong Kong or some other place when you have the opportunity for having this unique location in the Middle East to do something that is unique, something
and it's forward-looking, right?
So I mean, Dubai is impressive in many ways. What happened there, but to me, it doesn't look like Dubai. I mean, or what Dubai should be. Then and I don't even know what the answer to that question is. But I think you need to have a certain amount of debate, discussion, and figure out what would that new style be, or what would that new way of living be for a place that is unique to a particular region. Living in Shanghai and living in Dubai shouldn't be the same, I imagine. They're different cultures, different people who live there. Yes, these are cosmopolitan places where lots of people come from international destinations or, different countries. But you should somehow showcase the local.
There shouldn't be a kind of a definition of international city like Lujiazui or like Dubai. You mentioned that, scenario for me is like, I think the only difference of living there is actually the look of the concierge boys. Maybe if you step into a skyscraper, or even for, I think, some of the regions across the world, there is only tiny differences between cities like, regions like, locations like Lujiazui and the city of Dubai.
I think if you remove language, and if you remove the people, and you just leave the buildings,
it's exactly the same.
They all look the same.
Yeah.
But you can say, well, the population in Dubai, you find lots of people from India and from the Philippines, and all that. Yeah, the subcontinent. In the hospitality, industry. You come to Shanghai or to other cities in China, well, they all look, Asian, they're Chinese. The language written is, Chinese and English. Over there, it's mostly Arabic. English in Dubai. I mean, even Arabic you don't find, so much.
It's an international city.
Because the population in Dubai, and this is what's unique also about Dubai, is something like 90%
non-Arabic.
Non-local people. So what is the one common language that everybody can use to communicate? English.
Mm-hmm.
You come here, how many foreigners do you have in a place like Shanghai or any large Chinese city? Minimal.
So you are an artist and also an architect. For you traveled across the world. Who did a good job as a city to strike the balance between preservation and development? My answer probably be Paris. Because I traveled to Paris, I really liked Paris in a way that it preserve what is old and what is new and have the La Défense there and trying to strike a balance. That is the most artistic way that I can think of, as a non-architect background person. What's your answer?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I would divide cities into maybe two types of, let's say, economies. These are mature economies that you talk about. France, Germany,
Barcelona,
Italy, Spain, any of these, places. They've already been through the phase that China has been going through.
Maybe 150 years ago, starting, yeah.
So they understand some of these issues. For whatever reason, some buildings were protected back then, and then there are laws in place. But you look at a place like China, a place like
Bangkok,
like Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
These are all emerging economies, and there is something about developing very fast and about becoming international. The pace of construction now and implementation of technologies and all that happens really, really fast. And I think it happened without deep thinking in a way. So yes, you can say a lot of the old, part of the city has been,
demolished,
and then it's replaced by modern things. It's very convenient. I mean, Shanghai is a very, very convenient city. I love living here in many ways.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is going back to what we were saying before, the soul of the place. So I can't really tell you that there's one city in the world in the emerging economies
that has done a perfect job.
That have done a good job necessarily. I mean, one city actually that I still admire, I mean, a lot of the work that is being done there is Istanbul.
Istanbul. Oh, yeah. Istanbul. I've never been, but it's all on my list.
Oh, and you should definitely go there. For me, it is the quintessential Middle Eastern, city. Short of having flying carpets, it has everything else. I mean, it's fantastic.
And you talk about Dali when you talk about the local communities. It's not the token places, I visited another city in China, which is Kashgar in Xinjiang.
I've never been to Xinjiang.
Yeah, for me, it's like visiting Xinjiang is a fresh experience for me as well because it's very far from the eastern part of the country. I fly 5 hours from Shanghai to Urumqi and then 2 hours from Urumqi to Kashgar and then 6 hours from Kashgar back to Shanghai. And that experience was very unique for me. It's like, I isolate myself in the Asian city of Kashgar. I know the city has existed for thousands of years. And the local community still reside in the city. And I put on my AirPods and I put together some, podcast. And I just walk across, not the tourist places, locations, but I walk across all the small alleys and deep into the neighborhoods. I find that the young boys and girls playing soccer and people are just chatting each other in the local, there is certain small community centers within the city. I find that, okay, this is the perfect city because, you can observe what was preserved. There is an area open to tourists and you can have the Xiaohongshu moment and you can experience the authentic thing. And then you can you have literally the neighborhoods intact, preserving there when people living there. The reason why I feel that I'm kind of isolating myself from the rest of the neighborhood because I still have my podcast connecting me with the rest of the world. But what I experienced there is something very unique. The same experience that I have in Dali. It's like if you turn into a smaller alley in Dali, the Asian town of Dali, you find this is an entirely different non-touristic thing.
But speaking of international destinations, take your headphones and your, podcasts and all that and go to Istanbul.
Istanbul, yeah.
You would have a very similar experience from what you just described. I haven't been to Kashgar. It's on my bucket list, but I still haven't been there.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot to offer in China and across the world. For me, it's like, having these very personal experiences and just to remember the moments. And especially, you're a photographer, you capture a lot of moments. During my travels, I'm a good photographer of other people, but usually the other people who travel with me, they took terrible pictures of mine. So usually I'm behind the lenses. I'm just capturing what the moments are.
Same thing for me. I don't have pictures of me,
My mom always criticized, you need to take pictures in front of the monuments when you travel. I say, okay, I'm behind the camera, and that's good enough. I just want to preserve the moment and just to see. Sometimes I like to revisit places when I've never been. It's like, every time, even for Shanghai, the city that you leave, if you go to a neighborhood that you've never been, you say, okay, this is something fascinating. And the gentrification and also the renovation and urban renewal thing is happening on a daily basis here. There's always a new surprise happening in China.
The surprises in Shanghai are now very, very frequent.
And
they're
heartbreaking.
Very fast and they're very heartbreaking. But I wanted to go back to something when you mentioned Kashgar. This is one thing I find really interesting about being in China. It's a country the same size as the U.S.
The European Union.
Europe, and yet, because of all the nationalities that you have here, you have many different traditions, both in architecture or intangible stuff like, the crafts and all that. You don't get bored traveling around China. I mean, in the U.S., you can say, well, they speak with a slight drawl in the South, or in California, very different from somewhere else, but
the rest is the same.
But it's pretty much, the same in some ways. I know somebody listening might say, well, come on, we're different in America. But I think the differences here in China are much more pronounced. And that's what I find fascinating traveling around the country.
It's an adventure on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, it's like I really enjoy that I have the access of traveling, because I'm an entrepreneur now. So it means that my itinerary and my scheduling is flexible compared with my other colleagues who work for a large corporation. But for me, it's like I always want to seize the opportunity. For instance, I was asked to teach a session for the local, really large company in Shanxi. So that brought me to Shanxi for the very first time. And you just finished your trip to Shanxi,
yes.
right? My personal view about Shanxi is actually very fascinating because this is fresh for me. And also there is a holy Buddhism mountain which is called Wutaishan.
Yeah.
It has very interesting atmosphere there, and I visited there, and also I visited the city of Datong. And I find that the local people are super welcoming and friendly, and they're really eager to share what they want to share. And also the food there is good, and also the preservation of the architecture, especially the old structures there, is kind of the top notch in China, across China. What was your impression? That was your first trip to Shanxi.
That was my first trip to Shanxi, but very similar to what you said. The people were very, very friendly, very proud, very generous, very welcoming at all levels. I mean, from the, let's say the top famous artists to all the construction workers on the site. Fantastic. I love the architecture because I haven't seen old architecture like this.
Especially in without the nails, right? All the wood structures without.
Yes, I mean, those were fascinating. We've been to several places nearby where we were, within maximum kind of an hour and a half by bus.
By car, yeah.
By car. But still, I mean, I haven't seen anything like that in China, in other parts. Very well preserved. Let's say, I mean, preserved in the sense that they're not falling down, but maybe they're not in great shape.
Yeah.
But still, you can feel like the history,
it's like a great grandpa watching you.
Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed Shanxi, and from what I hear in other parts of the province, they're really worth going. Unfortunately, the two places I want to go to, Pingyao and Datong, I'm told, well, they're kind of a bit of a circus now because of all the
summer vacation.
Yeah, because of
that's good for the local economy, but it's a sad thing for people who want to go deep in the cities.
But again, I go back to, it's not just that I have a point of view where I want to keep these cities without any gentrification or without money coming in from tourism. Everybody needs to live. Everybody needs to, run a business and make money. But do they all have to follow the same formula? Let's demolish the old and replace it with something else. Why can't the two live side by side, where we have the modern part of the city and also the history and the soul of the place where people can continue to live and showcase, what's happening there.
I think for me it's like, let's go back to Paris a little bit. I think it's 150 years ago or 160 years ago, Paris underwent a massive renovation, Haussmann, right? Yeah. And we always like Marie, the region, when they preserve the old Paris. But now, I think for a lot of Chinese cities, in the next 150 years, maybe the newly developed structures, if they preserved well, they will become antiques and they will become structures with history. But for me, it's like we did not have the level of deep thinking when we renovate the entire city, to tear down the old and just build up the new. That's a sad thing for me as a Chinese, because I wasn't able to travel to these locations before they were demolished. But what I can only observe and see is the renovated or the beautified, supposed to be the Asian style.
You mean here in Shanghai?
No, across the country.
Across the country?
Yeah, across the country. Because there is no time, literally, to kind of really... That's why I love the city of Quanzhou.
Quanzhou I love.
Quanzhou, yeah. Quanzhou has the...
But I'm sure gentrification is also...
happening there.
Happening there. I mean, I was there a few years ago. And again, I'm seeing let's say the modern part, because at some point there was also a lot of demolition. I mean, Quanzhou, for a lot of people who don't know the city, it was the maritime terminus of the Silk Road.
Yeah.
And it was mostly, kind of Arab or Muslim traders and all that. And it was a very, very large...
It was the New York of that time, Amsterdam of that time, right?
Exactly. It was a very, very large port. I read a statistic rather, that there was something like 300 mosques or something like that. And now there's only one.
And also there is Christianity churches, Catholic churches, and their Buddhism and Taoism temples everywhere. But again, it's a super inclusive city, an international city.
Yes. So, it's a lovely, lovely vibe walking around the city, but there's also gentrification. The question to me is not whether there should be gentrification or not, because that's not even a statement, open
that's
for discussion.
That's a public policy thing, right?
We have to, modernize, you have to gentrify, you have to improve things. The question is, how do you keep the spirit of a place?
So I always believe that the architects have the philosophical solution and also the technical solution, right? But it takes time for you to work with a client.
It's not the architects. We're at the end of the...
decision-making.
There's public policy that already happened. There's the developer, and eventually the developer hires, an architect. So, the neighborhood is already demolished.
You are not starting from the very beginning,
and
right?
And you're saying, you're being asked to build something in a particular location that was already
within
demolished.
a certain budget.
Forget the budget. If the neighborhood has been demolished, it's too late right now to come in and do anything. So it begins with, the research or the policy itself. If the city, I suppose at the beginning, somebody has to first do the research, get advice from, again, different departments, faculty, institutions around here. What should we do about this place? I question, for example, why you need to pick a certain area. Could you not have picked another area to do that development? I'm not involved in that research, but that comes really early on. By the time it comes to the architect, it's a fait accompli already. Yeah. Everything has been demolished. You can do the best you can to develop something, but again, there are certain requirements that come from the client.
Yeah.
I have to have a certain commercial area. I have to have a certain amount of residential, office space, etc. Now it goes down to really style. You do have some influence about how you can do the architecture, perhaps, but I think the damage has already been done.
Yeah. what's done has been done, and it's
exactly.
It's a tragedy. It's not a tragedy. It's a very difficult balance for everyone. The stakeholders within this decision-making process is very, everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has their own requirement.
Right?
They have their own ambition and they have their own strategic goals. So how to balance that, I think, requires a very nuanced and even straightforward discussions. Because you have to understand each other's point of view, but you always need to speak out for what is right for your occupation. Because I think each stakeholders, nobody's making a mistake, right?
I mean, this suggests that there's an open discussion at the beginning as you're addressing a particular neighborhood. And I don't know how it happens, here, but the government decides to do something. That's what will happen. It's promised to a particular developer. I mean, they buy the land or they lease it or what have you, and work develops. Yeah.
So from the skyscrapers in Shanghai, I believe that you were in Shanghai, that you worked with a lot of clients to put together skyscrapers, right?
Well, in the beginning, I worked for a large corporate firm here. I didn't work on the very large projects, but I worked on a lot of corporate projects in here. And then once I left, I formed a small design practice with
like-minded.
With a Shanghainese partner, here in Shanghai. And so we were doing a lot of educational work across the country.
And fun projects in your
They
mind.
were fun projects. Yes. They were small projects. They were very Chinese, only in China, nothing corporate. So that was very interesting. And then I'm also teaching. So I've been doing that for...
When was you invited to teach at the Suzhou University School of Architecture?
I was invited by the university about 7 years ago.
7 years ago. So it's been 7 years since you started teaching. As a mentor and as a professor, what's the difference? Because you mentored a lot of young architects throughout their career.
Well, it's very interesting because I think I've evolved also in the role. I mean, for me, it was teaching. I've taught before, on and off, like a class here, a studio there. Here, I'm not teaching full-time, but I do teach very intense design studios.
So it's very hands-on.
But I mean, this is how architecture is taught. So the core usually of the architecture program, you have a studio about, a dozen students, and you give out the assignments. We're going to design a house, or we're going to design
a theater or something.
A theater or what have you. And then each student will work on their own design. So you're talking to each one of them and giving them direct instruction one-on-one. We call it a desk crit for critique.
That's different from a mentor role in a large corporate or a kind of a client. 和黑山的聊天非常的有意思，不知不觉我们就聊了1个半小时。为了不让大家一次听得太累，我们把这期节目分成了2部分。今天上半场就告一段落，期待下一期的更多精彩内容，千万不要错过。可持续对话，让对话可持续。我是哲明，我们下期再见。